Today. So we are on session 12 of Indiana 211 University. And thank you all for joining us. And today we're going to cover the data for the central part of the state. And so Sherry, if you'll go to the next slide. First and foremost, we always ask that you complete a survey. It helps us to know what we might need to do to improve, of course, but then also if you are looking to obtain CEUs, we do need you to complete the survey so that we can get you that certificate of completion. And here's the link. I'll also put it in the chat so that you can access it there. Next slide. So today's, again, is Central Region, and Sherry will cover all the counties that entails, but it's here, area number 3, so Boone, Hamilton, Putnam, Hendricks, Marion, Hancock, Morgan, Johnson, and Shelby counties.
All right, thank you, Jill. So we'll go ahead and get started with the Central Region, as Jill mentioned. Today is the third of 5 presentations that we have done, if you have not been able to attend the other 2. But the regional map that we use actually comes from the 5 regions that the Department of Health's Division of Nutrition and Physical Activity uses for their Local Food Purchase Assistance Cooperative Agreement Program, or LFPA. And so today we will cover those 9 counties in the Central Region. And then some, but not all of the data that I will be sharing today can be found on the data dashboard on our website. So like with the last 2 presentations, after I share that regional data, I will also do a brief refresher on how to access and utilize the data on the dashboard as well. And then as I am presenting today, if you have any questions as we go along, go ahead and put those in the Q&A section, and Jill will be monitoring that, and she will let me know if there are any questions, and I can cover those throughout the presentation. Otherwise, we will address any questions that are left at the end as well. So all of the data I will be presenting today will be for the full year of 2024. And our first graph shows the total number of calls received in 2024 for each of those 9 counties, as well as the number of distinct callers and the number of referrals made to callers in those counties. Since the counts for Marion County were so much larger than the other counties, I have those stated off to the side rather than in the graph to present the scale from being so large that we couldn't see the other counties' counts. So you will notice that the distinct caller counts are the smallest counts for each county, and that's because those represent each individual caller, and many people call 211 more than once. So their multiple calls are counted in the total call number, but they are just counted once as a distinct caller. And you will also notice that the number of referrals is the largest count for each county, and that's because our community navigators do provide at least 3 referrals for each need that a caller has, if possible. So of these 9 counties here, Marion County by far had the greatest number of calls, distinct callers, and referrals, with over 209,000 referrals in 2024, followed by Johnson County with almost 10,000 referrals, Hamilton County with almost 8,500 referrals, and Hendricks County with just under 8,000 referrals. And for reference, the entire state of Indiana in 2024 received over 174,000 calls for over 117,000 distinct callers and made almost 570,000 referrals. So Marion County alone makes up over 33% of those total callers and referrals, and then about 10% of the total calls for the state. This graph shows the percentage of 2024 calls from various need categories for each county, and I have included the top 3 need categories we receive calls for, which are housing, utility assistance, and food and meals, as well as 2 other need categories that do not receive as many calls, but that agencies are often interested in learning more about, and those are transportation and mental health and substance use disorder. You'll notice this graph also includes Indiana in addition to the 9 central region counties. So we can compare the percentages to the full state average as well. We can see that of these 5 need categories, housing shows up in the greatest percentage of calls for every county, as well as for Indiana as a whole. The only counties here that did not have a higher percentage of housing calls than the state average were Marion and Putnam counties. This group of counties is split pretty evenly on whether utility assistance or food and meals is the next highest need category. For 7 of these 9 counties, as well as for the state as a whole, there is a less than 2% difference between the percentage of utility assistance and food and meals calls. Putnam County has the largest difference, with over 24% of calls having a need for utility assistance and about 15% of calls having a need for food and meals. The counties that had a higher percentage of transportation calls than the whole state include Boone, Hendricks, Johnson, Morgan, and Putnam counties. And then the only counties that did not have a higher percentage of mental health and SUD calls than the state as a whole were Marion and Putnam counties. And then this graph shows the percentage of 2024 calls with unmet needs for those same 5 need categories. We consider a need to be unmet during a call if a community navigator is unable to provide a referral for that need. This data represents unmet needs that occurred for 3 reasons. The first is that the service the caller needed was unavailable in their area. The second is that the caller is ineligible for all resources available in their area. And the third reason a need may be unmet is if the caller has exhausted existing resources, meaning they have already been referred to all of the available resources they are eligible for and are in need of additional resources. Transportation was the greatest unmet need for the state as a whole in 2024, as well as for Hamilton, Hancock, Hendricks, and Morgan counties. And of these counties, Morgan County had the greatest transportation unmet need, with over 21% of transportation calls having an unmet need. Utility assistance was the greatest unmet need for Boone, Putnam, and Shelby counties, with Boone having the greatest unmet need for utility assistance at over 22% of calls. And then housing was the greatest unmet need for Johnson and Marion counties, with Marion County having over 20% of housing calls with an unmet need. There is more unmet needs data available on our data dashboard, which I will talk about towards the end of the presentation for anyone who missed the last 2 sessions. And I will also talk about how we use this data to identify new resources and how you may be able to help us with that process as well. The remainder of the graphs will show data from the demographics and social determinants of health questions that our community navigators ask 211 callers to help them better identify which resources they will be eligible for, as well as what additional needs the caller may have that they can also provide referrals for. It is important to note that 211 callers are not required to answer any of these questions if they do not feel comfortable doing so. So keep in mind that there is some missing data and that these percentages only reflect the responses we did receive. And that is why the categories for any given county add up to less than 100%. So this first graph shows the percentage of 2024 callers who identified with each sex category in each county. There were more female than male callers in every county and in the state as a whole. The only counties that had a higher percentage of female callers than Indiana as a whole were Johnson and Marion counties. And the counties that had a higher percentage of male callers than Indiana as a whole were Boone, Marion, Morgan, Putnam, and Shelby counties.
Jerry, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
There are some questions in the chat. Would you like to wait till the end, or do you want me to read them out loud now?
If they're relevant now, we can go ahead and read those and answer them. That's fine.
Okay. So one person asked or mentioned, it's interesting that Marion County has a fewer percentage of housing calls than the entire state. Do we ever do any additional research to find out why a need in a particular county is higher or lower than the state average?
Yeah, so good question. So in terms of research, what 211 does is we focus more on the unmet needs currently than we do on the needs that are being met, since our job is to make sure we're maintaining a database of resources and providing those referrals. So we focus on the unmet needs and we go searching for resources that we can add to our database to meet those unmet needs so that we do have a referral next time. In terms of looking at what those top needs are and kind of investigating why, that is not something that we do at the time or at this time. But part of the reason why we do present this data is so that other agencies in the community who are interested in seeing data such as what those highest needs are and maybe investigating why, they can take that data and then do that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So another question was, are these webinars recorded? Yes, this one is being recorded and the others have been recorded. The link to watch it on the FSSA YouTube channel will be available later today or tomorrow, and we will send that out to you so that you can go back and watch them or refer others to that link. And finally, there is one more question, and I think we have the answer to that. Is there additional information about caller requests? For example, total Hamilton County calls across 5 categories, except the total Hamilton County calls across 5 categories presented, a little over 80%. Curious what the other calls were about. And I think that's, are you going to go over the dashboard at the end?
Yeah, I'll explain more about the dashboard and how to find more data on there.
Okay, so to the person who asked that question, or everybody in general, we will show you how to find what types of calls we received through using the Indiana 211 data dashboard towards the end of the presentation.
All right, is that all the questions we had for now?
There was one that says, I missed the percentage for food and meals. So there is data for more than 80% of calls. I'm not quite sure I understand that question, but I think.
Are they wanting to see that percentage again, maybe?
Yeah, let's do that.
For the, so for food and meals, here are the top, or here is the percentage of needs that we had that were met for each county. So we're looking at the green bars here for food and meals. If whoever was interested in that data wants to take a picture or screenshot of that.
Perfect. Thank you.
And then, yeah, and then here was the unmet needs, if that's maybe what they were referring to, the unmet needs. So for food and meals, we're looking at the orange bar here. And then again, as Jill mentioned, all of this data is on our dashboard as well, and we'll explain more about how to find that. So if you miss any data that you were wanting to jot down, you can always reach out to us later if you would like the data from these specific slides that I shared, but you can also visit that dashboard that we'll talk about as well. All right, so I think we're ready to move on now, right, Jill?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so our next graph shows the percentage of 2024 callers from various age ranges. We can see that in almost all of these counties and for the state as a whole, the age group with the largest percentage of callers was 31 to 45 years old. For 6 of the 9 counties and for the state as a whole, the age group with the second largest percentage of callers was 46 to 60 years old, followed by 18 to 30 years old, and then 60 years and older. For for Morgan County, the age group with the highest percentage of callers was 46 to 60 years old, followed by 31 to 45, 18 to 30, and then 60 years and older. And for Boone County, there was actually a larger percentage of callers from the 18 to 30 year age group than there were in the 46 to 60 or 60 years and older groups. And then for Putnam County, the age group with the second largest percentage of callers was 60 years or older, closely followed by 46 to 60 years old. The collective outlier here is the younger than 18 age group, with every county in the state having less than 1% of callers from this age group. While youth callers are much less common, we do receive some calls from youth looking for resources. And then this graph shows the percentage of 2024 callers with various housing situations. In every county here except Boone County, and in the state as a whole, the largest group was those who had housing at the time of their 211 call. Although it is worth noting that every county had less than 35% of their callers say that they had stable housing. The largest group for Boone County and the second largest group for all other counties and for the state as a whole was those who had housing and were worried about losing it in the future, with the percentage of callers in that group ranging from 14% to 24%. The third largest group for all 9 counties and for the state was those with no housing, ranging from 10% to 17% of callers, followed by those who were facing eviction or foreclosure, which ranged from 3% to 7% of callers. And then this graph shows the percentage of 2024 callers from various race categories. For the state as a whole, about 33% of callers identified as white, while 29% of callers identified as Black. We can see that this group of counties varies greatly from that state trend, with all counties having a much larger gap in callers from these two racial groups. Morgan, Putnam, and Shelby counties all had over 60% of callers identify as white and less than 5% of callers identify as Black. Johnson County had about 53% of callers identify as white and 14% of callers identify as Black. And in Boone, Hamilton, Hancock, and Hendricks counties, the percentage of callers who identified as white ranged from 35% to 47%, while the percentage of callers who identified as Black ranged from 17% to 23%. Marion County, however, differs from the state trend in the opposite direction, with about 43% of callers having identified as Black and 20% of callers having identified as white. All other race categories had less than 5% of callers for every county here and the state as a whole. This graph shows the percentage of 2024 callers from various employment categories. For the whole state and for Boone, Hendricks, Johnson, and Marion counties, the largest group was those who were unemployed and looking for work, ranging from 15% to 18% of callers. But for Hendricks and Johnson counties, that group is very closely followed by those who were employed full-time. For Morgan, Putnam, and Shelby counties, the largest group was those who were unable to work due to being disabled, ranging from 14% to 19% of callers. And for Hamilton and Hancock counties, the largest group was those who were employed full-time, ranging from 14% to 16% of callers. However, for Hancock County, that group is very closely followed by those who were unable to work due to being disabled. I also want to note that Indiana as a whole and all 9 of these counties had a greater percentage of callers who were employed full-time than callers who were employed part-time. And then this graph shows the percentage of 2024 callers from preferred language categories. For Indiana as a whole and every county here, the percentage of callers whose preferred language was English was 95% or higher. Among these 9 counties, Hamilton had the largest percentage of callers whose preferred language was Spanish, with that being 3.8% of callers, followed by Marion County with 3.2% of callers. And for comparison, the state as a whole had just 1.7% of callers whose preferred language was Spanish. And then lastly, if you notice the small sliver of yellow above Hamilton and Marion counties, those indicate that we do also receive some calls from individuals whose preferred language is one other than English or Spanish. So this is a good time to remind everyone that our community navigators do have access to a service that allows them to connect with interpreters for over 240 languages. So we are able to assist those individuals as well. Additionally, on our website at in211.org, there is a Google Translate option at the top that allows individuals to translate the entire website to the language of their choice and search for resources on our website in that chosen language. This graph shows the percentage of 2024 callers from various annual household income ranges. For Indiana as a whole and every county here, the largest group of callers is those with an annual household income of less than $15,000, ranging from 25% to 35% of callers. For every county, the trend seems to be that the higher the income range, the lower the percentage of callers we have from that range. And then this is our last graph for today, and this shows the percentage of 2024 callers with various highest education levels. For Indiana as a whole and every county here, the largest group of callers was those whose highest level of education is high school, ranging from 27% to 39% of callers. The second largest group for almost all counties was those whose highest level of education is junior high, ranging from 5% to 13% of callers. For Hamilton County, the second largest group was actually those who had a bachelor's degree. And for Hancock and Hendricks counties, the second largest group was those who completed some college. So as I mentioned earlier, some of the data I presented today and much more can be found on our interaction data dashboard. So I wanted to remind everyone how to access that. On our website at in211.org, you would go to the data tab and then click on data dashboard. After exploring the data dashboard, if you cannot find the data that you're looking for, then you can click on data requests, and that will take you to a form that we just recently developed that allows you to request additional data from us. So we have gone in depth on the data dashboard in previous sessions. So if you're interested in watching those, you can find those on our 211 University page. The recordings are there. But since I presented county level data in today's session, I wanted to remind everyone that county level data can also be found on the data dashboard. You can hover over a county that appears in the Indiana map on the dashboard to see some county specific metrics, or you can click on the county to filter the entire dashboard to display data for just that county. So then you could see demographic data for just that county, as well as data on the types of needs and unmet needs that are most prevalent in that county. Also, if you would like to see data for multiple adjacent counties at once, then you just have to hold your mouse down and highlight all of the counties you want to include. There is also a dashboard user guide that appears at the top of the data dashboard page that includes more specific instructions for filtering the dashboard in various ways as well. I also wanted to remind everyone that the dashboard can be filtered by a specific agency as well. So you can see all of the same data for a single agency listed in the 211 database. This can be beneficial if you're interested in seeing caller data from referrals made to your agency or another agency of interest. The agency filter appears at the top of the dashboard above the county map and allows you to search by agency name, and then you can unselect all there and then just select the agency name that you searched for. So as I mentioned, we do have a new data requests form, and this is what that looks like. We do encourage you to visit our data dashboard first to see if you can find the data you're looking for. And if you cannot find it on the dashboard, then you can submit this form. The form will ask you some questions about why you are interested in 211 data and what exactly you're looking for. And if you have any questions about the data request form or about 211 data in general, you can reach us at the email address that is listed on that page there, and that is for all of our data inquiries. Since I presented on some unmet needs data, I also wanted to talk about how we address those unmet needs. So after identifying what the unmet needs are from caller data each month, we also identify which counties those needs are most unmet in. Then our community engagement and resource curation teams dedicate time to identifying new resources we may be able to add to the database to help meet some of those unmet needs. We do this by conducting internet searches, but also by reaching out to community partners who may be able to provide valuable information. Among the unmet needs data shared today, or the data you may discover, excuse me, you may discover on our interaction dashboard. Sorry about that. Of the data that you may find on our dashboard among the unmet needs data, if you ever notice that there is a significant unmet needs for a type of resource that you are familiar with in your community, we would appreciate you sharing that information with us. You can use the guided search on our website to identify whether certain resources are already listed in our database. The best way to do that is to go to in211.org, and right on the homepage, you will see a list of service categories to choose from. However, if you select the advanced search option that we see here, then you can use the keyword search to search for a specific agency and see if their services are listed in the database. And if you are aware of any services that are not already listed in the database, if they are your own agency services, then you can complete the resource listing request form on our website. Again, that's in211.org. You would just go to the Join the Database tab and then click on Resource Requests to add to 211 database. And if you are aware of any services offered by another agency that would be a good addition to the database, you can either direct that agency to that listing request form, or you can send us an email at in211info@fssa.in.gov to let us know, and then we will reach out to that agency. All right, so that is everything that I had for you today. I'm going to let Jill kind of talk about the next session, but at this time, if you have any questions, go ahead and put those in the Q&A section, and then we will come back to those.
Thank you, Sherry. That information is so valuable. Thank you. We did have one question, and to answer that person's question, I first wanted to preface my answer by saying we do have a series of guidelines, for those that don't know, that we have to consider before adding a resource to the database. There are some types of resources that we do not add to our database. But to answer that question, the person wanted to know, how do providers attract clients? Most of the referrals we receive from the BEADS portal, and we do not have to be chosen even when we accept the referrals. What strategies can be used to encourage or refer clients to new providers? I would answer that by saying, just get involved in as many or resource events and health fairs and resource fairs that you can, by tabling and providing and sharing that information about your service, but also possibly get involved in the different systems of care meetings that each county or group might have. And usually what they'll do is invite you to speak about your service at those different virtual meetings around the state. And if that didn't answer your question, please don't hesitate to reach out to me at the in211info@fssa.in.gov, and we'll be happy to answer that question in more depth about what our guidelines are to be included in the resource database. Another question is, when 211 is searching for community resources to meet needs, is that a basic search looking for food pantries in the area, or do the searches get more specific? For example, services geared to minorities. The way our search works is basically by zip code. And so a person will enter or click or choose a category that they need. And then from that drop down, further select more details about that category. And then when they type in the zip code, the guided search will bring up the closest to that person's zip code and then trickle down to the furthest away. And when you are looking in our in the in211.org search, there is additional information about each of the resources. So you would click on the more info button, and it will give you all of the details about what a person needs to go to that facility, what documentation they might need to bring, what age restrictions, gender restrictions, county restrictions, whatever there might be, and as well as hours of operation. So the search, there are some search demographics, if you will. For example, veterans, you can search specific veterans info. Sorry, that's my dog. Specific veterans. I'm trying to think of some of the other specific categories. Sherry, can you think about it?
Yeah, so to add to that, so our navigators do ask demographic and social determinants of health questions, and that's what some of the data today came from. And so by asking those questions, they do learn more about the client and some of the resources they would be eligible for. And so in addition to veteran specific resources, there are also resources specific to parents, youth, individuals of a certain age. And so, because they've already asked these questions, they're able to better identify the most appropriate resources.
Perfect, thank you. And so another question, which is a great question right now, about cooling center information, how can we add sites in our county? Just have them email you all? Yes, please do. Send us any info you have and we will definitely reach out if it needs to be added, if we don't already have it. And then to your other point, also, can the first landing page reflect cooling centers instead of being so warming center oriented or centered? It's rather confusing right now. Thank you for that. We will look into that because I'm not really certain what it says, but thank you for pointing that out and I'll see what we can figure out. When a person calls 211 and asks for a cooling center, it obviously comes up much easier probably. But yeah, I believe it's under the seasonal cat button on the webpage, isn't it?
Yes, I believe so. I would have to look to see exactly what it's called. Yeah, the cooling centers should be showing up on the guided search. I'm not sure what the name of the category is off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think it says both warming and cooling. And I think that's why, because warming is the first word, and I think that's why it's confusing.
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah. They might be under the same category and the same name, but once you click on that, you will be seeing cooling centers right now rather than warming centers.
And soon we will have all of the back to school, free school supply stuff added. And so I've been telling people to check back in a couple of weeks for all of those. So a couple more questions. Respite care. Okay, so this goes back to the person who was inquiring about how to get more traffic towards their service. And so I think that he's answering a question from earlier, so I think we're good there. Are there any additional questions? Okay, if anybody thinks of anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. So our next session is on Wednesday, July 16th at 10 a.m. And we will be covering our fourth of the 5 regions. This is the Southwest region, and so we'll be covering Vermilion, Park, Virgo, or not Virgo, Vigo, Clay, Owen, Sullivan, Green, Monroe, Brown, Lawrence, Knox, Davies, Martin, Orange, Gibson, Pike, Du Bois, Posey, Vanderburgh, Warwick, Spencer, and Perry counties. So that is again Wednesday, July 16th at 10 a.m. It's coming sooner. This particular session was a week later than normal, so the next one's going to come up kind of quick. And I think, so for more information or to contact us, here's our information. This is the community engagement team info. So that's Sherry and myself. Of course, you can always ask any questions. We do also have an inbox for questions about adding your resources to the database, but also to ask about additional data reports that are more in depth. And but when in doubt, send us an email at this address. And again, here is the survey link. If you would kindly complete it, we would be most grateful. I don't see any open questions. I'll give it just another minute and then. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone, for all of these sessions. And again, the link for the YouTube recording will be shared later on today or tomorrow. And it will be sent to your email that you gave us for this particular session today. Did you have a question? Oh, just a comment. Thank you. You're very welcome. You're very welcome. This data that Sherry gathers is, I think, so helpful, and I'm so glad you were able to join us today. Okay, well, I think with that, we'll wrap it up. So thank you again, and we'll see you next month.